Well, welcome, old timers and newcomers. And thanks for joining us on our first effort to raise money for the Neal Casal Music Foundation. It's live TV, folks. Anything can happen, but we hope we can get it right for all of you out there tonight. And we hope you will join us for a future show here at the Tree of Forgiveness. You can see our website for upcoming event schedule. And we'll also be having a late show afterwards tonight with some musical performances featuring some of our good friends here at the Tree. So stick around after the show for some more live music. Watch the chat for details on the different contribution methods. We will keep our donation link live on Eventbrite throughout the night and all next week until the Kickstarter ends. Just for your information, Eventbrite only charges about half the fees that Kickstarter takes. So if you are not interested in a reward, you just want to contribute, more bang for your buck through Eventbrite with us. And we'll be forwarding all the money directly to the foundation. So 10 weeks ago, we opened our virtual doors. And with our ninth show tonight, my dream is coming true. We started this virtual nightclub to support musicians financially and to give them an interactive outlet during this crisis so that they can see their audiences and enjoy performing as if they were in a live club, even though it's through a screen. One where all the net proceeds go to them. There are no paid staff, period. Every cent after expenses goes to the artists. Our other goal was to begin donating to charities like Music Cares and Backline once we got our finances squared away. So we've met our first goal each and every night that we've put on a show here. Great experiences for the artists and for the audience. And tonight our second goal begins to be met. The Neal Casal Music Foundation came along at the perfect time. It's a series of cosmic coincidences that have brought us all together tonight. Strange things have happened along the way, but it always felt like they were leading us here. Every week, I dedicate the show to Neal Casal. And our dream now is a reality, because tonight, this one truly is for Neal. It's my great pleasure to hand over the keys to the bus tonight to my friend Gary Waldman. He'll be our driver on this journey. I'll be back in a couple of hours to take back the controls for the remainder of the show. And I'll see you all then. So now let me turn the show over to Neal's lifelong friend and manager, Gary Waldman.
Thanks, Vito. And thank you for doing this. And you asked me about this a month or so ago. And I just thought it was a nice idea to bring on a bunch of Neal's friends and people to tell some stories about him, and a few musical performances as well. And I recognize some of the names in here already. And I would say we've had this Kickstarter going for the Neal Casal Music Foundation going for about 3 weeks now. And you've all been so generous. It's really blown our minds. We set the goal very low. We asked for $25,000 and we knew we would get more than that. But I think right now we're about $120,000, and there's been some private donations as well. And that's just phenomenal because we're trying to put out a 33-song album and a 250-page photo book. So both of those projects are really expensive. So the generosity that you guys have shown has been amazing. And also buying tickets for this event tonight has helped us raise a few $1,000s more. So thank you for that. And just so you know who I am, if you don't know who I am, I met Neal back in 1987. I was working at a record store in Cedar Knolls, New Jersey, and Neal was graduating high school up the street and had a kind of a really cool metal band that he was in, and those were the heydays of hair metal, and Neal had very high hair at the time. He knew a lot about hairspray and leopard skin pants and things like that. But once he graduated high school, he gravitated back towards the music that he really loved, which was really the Rolling Stones and free and kind of English rock bands is what he really loved. And he, right after he graduated high school, he started working at a guitar store in Hackettstown, New Jersey called The Music Maker. And there was a guy there named Davis Janes, who was about 15 years older than Neal, and he had played for years with Leslie West, and he was an amazing guitar player and singer, and he really became Neal's mentor on guitar and helped him out and kind of pointed him in the right musical direction. And at the same time, I was working at a record store, so I had a massive record collection, and Neal used to come over and make cassette tapes of records that he'd never heard of, and it was just a great way to learn about music. And at that point, he was just a sponge, soaking up playing and music, and was really a fun few years. And then he started writing some solo songs, and we came up with some money and made some demos back in 1991. And he very quickly got a publishing deal, and that soon led to a record deal, and just kind of launched his career. So for those of you who have discovered him in the last 10 years or so through Ryan Adams and the Cardinals or the Chris Robinson Brotherhood, there's also quite a few solo albums that he made that are beautiful. And the tribute album that we're making is all solo songs from Neal. So we have over 30 artists doing that, and we're about halfway through it, and it's been incredible to hear his songs in other people's hands. So that's really been beautiful, and can't wait for you all to hear that. You might have already heard the Billy Strings with Circles Around the Sun song that we released. And this first thing we're going to do tonight is show you a video from the Kenny Roby Band. So Kenny Roby, if you don't know who he is, he was in a North Carolina band called Six String Drag that were kind of a sensation in what was called alt country back in the mid 90s. And Neal and I worked with Kenny, and I introduced Neal to Kenny back then, and they became buddies. And they toured Europe together in the UK as a solo, like about a month long. Like they would each play a set, and then they would play it together, and they had a lot of fun there. And they also made a record together called Black Riversides. So Kenny's also made some solo records in the last few years, and he made one last year, and it was a record that Neal was going to produce. Of course, tragically, Neal took his life, and that has been it's been a great, tragedy to live through for all of us who were close to him and all of you who were listeners to him. At the same time, beautiful stuff has come out of it. So what we're trying to do with the foundation is raise money to buy instruments and lessons for kids in schools in North Jersey and in Southern New York State. And those are the places where Neal was raised. And he loved that area, and it meant a lot to him. So we're trying to honor him by doing that and helping kids learn about music in the name of Neal Casal. And as well, we will also be donating quite a bit to organizations that provide mental health care and medical care for musicians who can't get it otherwise. So we're going to be donating money to Music Cares and Backline. And so your money will go to a good thing in Neal's honor, and hopefully we can help other musicians and prevent the type of tragedy that happened with Neal. But anyway, back to Kenny Roby. I'm actually in Woodstock, New York right now at a place called Applehead Studios. And Kenny, by complete coincidence, we didn't even set it up this way. So this might have been Neal's there's been a lot of magical things that have happened, and we attribute it to Neal kind of helping us out. And so Kenny came up here to do the Woodstock Sessions, which is an internet stream that they just did John Medeski, and they've done a lot of great things. And Kenny was going to be here. This happens to be the place where Kenny recorded his album last year. So we decided let's bring the band back from the album. So we have Jeff Hill, who, if you guys were CRB fans, you know Jeff, and Tony Leone, also from CRB. And then we have Jesse Aycock, who was in the Hardworking Americans with Neal, and John Shannon, who plays with Zephaniah OHora. And John was one of Neal's favorite guitar players over the last year. So when we get to Zephaniah, John plays with Zephaniah, and Neal produced that record and just loved John's playing. So we have this amazing lineup that we have here. So they happened to agree to do this Woodstock Sessions taping on the same day that Vito asked me to do this this web stream. So it was a nice coincidence. So we're going to start this off tonight with a video of Kenny and the guys playing Neal's song, Too Much to Ask. So we'll show you this right now, and then we'll chat with those guys for a second. And also, Kenny's record was produced by Dave Schools from Widespread Panic. Dave filled in for Neal and did an amazing job. And I think if Neal had turned over the torch to anybody, Dave was a good person to pick it up for sure. So we'll talk to Dave a little later too, but let's watch this video now.
Sometimes just being alive is enough. The money don't matter to me, just send me your love. I'm leaving as the crow flies, I'm coming, we don't even I could bring. Is it too much to ask of you? Am I moving too fast? Did I come back too soon? Is it too much to ask of you?
That's one of my favorite Neal songs. It's on his album Anytime Tomorrow. And I remember when he recorded that, his vocal on that song on the recording is all live. And we were, Jim Scott, who we'll talk to later, produced that. And I remember when he finished singing that, we were just like, that was beautiful. Nice job, Kenny. Let's take a look at Kenny and those guys. Jeff Hill, Tony Leone, Jesse Aycock, and John Lee Shannon. They're right down the hall from me here in Woodstock. They're taking a little break. There they are, look at that. Look at those guys. I think, can you hear me, Kenny?
Yeah.
Hey. So you remember that song, like that's a beautiful version you did, but you actually were around when you and Neal toured together in '98. I think Neal had just written that song or was working on it, and you heard it all the way back then. So you have a special connection with that song. And that song, your version, I don't know if it's this one we recorded today, but you will have a version of that song on the Highway Butterfly album when it comes out. So
Yes.
that was great. And all of Neal's other buddies there. Jeff Hill played with Neal for years and years, going back to 2000. I remember Neal and I went to Mercury Lounge. We were looking for backing musicians, and we saw Jeff, and we were like, oh, we got to recruit him. And then he and Neal played together for years. And Tony was in CRB for the last, 6 or 7 years, I think? 5 years, yep. And Jesse was in Hardworking Americans with Neal, and Jesse also had a solo record in 2013 that Neal produced. And then John Shannon over here plays guitar with Zephaniah OHora, and John is now the proud owner of Neal's B-Bender Telecaster because Neal loved John's playing and gifted that guitar to him. So you guys want to play one other short little tune here?
Sure.
I think, what are you gonna do?
We're going to do a song that Neal and I did on Black River Sides. We used to do it every night when we were touring in Europe. And it's sort of, I think it was sort of the parent song to Too Much to Ask. It's the same key, it's similar progression, kind of same melody and waltz.
Well, Neal only had a few tricks, but he used them well.
They were damn good ones, though.
Yeah.
We're going to try to see if we can pull off this trick. We just learned it, so let's try.
All right.
1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. You'd be a fool to reach out to me, hit me on my blind side. When heartache comes round, I won't let you be. Hit you from the inside. When the town fathers lay down at night, they'll be dreaming of you. While you're reading by candlelight of a love so true, waiting for you tales struck through the land. Oh, in their hearts was a gold mine. Winds rise and crowds, clouds cool the sand. We won't be home for the snow flies. And when the town fathers lay down at night, they'll be dreaming of you. While you're reading my candlelight, all the love so true, waiting for you. And when the town fathers lay down at night, they'll be dreaming of you. While you're eating by candlelight, oh, the love so true, waiting for you.
Great. Very nice. So when you were here in October and you made the album that you're putting out in August called The Reservoir by Kenny Roby, and it was produced by our friend Dave Schools.
Okay.
And I heard that while you guys were working on it, Dave was busy in the back room working on his side project called Uncle Dave's Band. Is that correct?
I wouldn't call it a side project. I mean, these things become bigger, you know,
Yeah.
organically huge. I mean, I don't know. Just wait till you see it.
Yeah. Well, the thing, he's always behind the curve though, because what is it? It's a band featuring a 15-string Ecuadorian bandolin and slide banjo. There's so many of.
I think he's slightly late on the Ecuadorian banjo craze. That was kind of like at least a year or two ago, like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But Jesse, Uncle Jesse, sweet baby Uncle Jesse is one of the really early adopters of the Woodstock slide banjo. There's only a few followers now, but I mean, they study him every day. It's amazing.
I know, that sound has swept the world. It's really incredible. I heard you're going to be collaborating with Avicii, right? A disco DJ thing? Like a DJ slide banjo collaboration?
It's like a work in progress, but it's coming along.
So exciting.
They can't figure out how to sync it up live for the people, but they're working on the technical aspect of it. Most slide banjo players are pretty primitive, so.
Yeah. No. Well, I've been told that we have an exclusive video of Uncle Dave's band. Is that correct?
What?
Oh, here it is.
Oh, yeah.
So dope.
Wow. I mean, I've never heard anything quite like that. It's obvious that, well, we're
pretty
going to bring
remarkable.
Dave on now. He's going to tell us. I think Uncle Dave's band apparently is going to be headlining Coachella next year. And we're exclusively letting everyone know that. So Dave's going to come on now and talk to you guys for a second. Dave?
Hey, everybody. How are you?
Uncle Dave.
Oh, I miss you guys. I wish I was at Applehead with you right now.
We wish you were here.
I mean, I'd make you some chili and we'd have some fun making music.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
They had lasagna tonight. Very lovely young woman made them a whole tray of vegetarian lasagna.
It was quite
That's
garlic bread
jealous.
and some kale salad.
Yes, kale
But
salad.
she's not very good on the Ecuadorian bandolin, so.
Well,
Look, you know, I mean, I don't even play that instrument I was playing. What's that called, Gary? You're the expert.
a 15-string Ecuadorian bandolin, of course.
That was my first time playing the 15-string Ecuadorian bandolin, and frankly, without Tony Leone's rudder-like time on the map, the whole thing would have fallen apart.
Well, he was doing a good chopping away there, keeping the beat. All right, well, we're going to let these guys go back to work. You guys go record some more songs, and we're going to chat with Dave. And we're going to bring Jim Scott on, and Dave Schools and Jim are going to chat about the Highway Butterfly tribute album to Neal. They are the co-producers of the album. And as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be 33 artists on it. We've recorded about 18 of them so far. And obviously we got held up because of the state of the world, but we are now regrouping and people are still recording their songs and getting those done. So let's bring Jim Scott in, see if he's happening. Say hello to Jim.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Jim. Jim is in Santa Clarita, California at Pliers Studio, which is where he works. And Jim goes way back with Neal. I first met Jim in 1990. I was working at a record label and Jim worked with some of the artists we had at the label. And I couldn't wait to tell him about Neal because Neal had just started writing songs and I just thought to myself, this is going to be great. If Jim likes Neal, they could work together, and that happened. And Jim produced Neal's first album, which was called Fade Away Diamond Time in 1995. And then he also produced Anytime Tomorrow in 1999, produced Circles Around the Sun's most recent album, and used Neal on lots of other records that he produced. He would hire Neal to come in and play guitar and sing background vocals, and was really one of Neal's great friends. And then we decided it would be great if Dave and Jim could work together on Highway Butterfly. Highway Butterfly is a song that Neal recorded in '99. It's on his Basement Dreams album. And I just thought that was a great title for a tribute album, Highway Butterfly, the songs of Neal Casal. So we'll chat about how we did that. We did a 10-day recording session in February, and we did 10 different artists. So each day a different artist came in to record their song with backing musicians. Jon Graboff, who you'll meet later, is on almost all the songs on the album so far. And Tony Leone, who you just saw, Jesse Aycock, Jeff Hill, all of Neal's buddies are on this album. And it's been a beautiful thing to do, to play his songs. And we've also cursed him out a few times, more than a few times probably. But he hasn't struck us down with a bolt of lightning yet. So, but like I said earlier, I think he's been appearing. So I don't know, you guys want to tell a little bit about the record that we're working on, or any Neal stories, anything you want?
Well, hey, Dave, how you doing, man? Nice to see you.
Hey, Jim, I miss you.
I miss you too. I wish you were down here. Gary, thanks so much for, keeping this all together. It's unbelievable. I can't believe that it was 30 years ago that you and I met. 30 years, man. That makes me like 44 years old, That's crazy how that time flies.
I'm 37.
I think it's, you're talking about Neal's first album and the Highway Butterfly record. I just think it's unbelievable that we actually got almost all of the original band from that tracking date together to record some songs for the Highway Butterfly record. Don Hevington, Bob Glaub, Greg Lees, John Ginty. And I just don't know who else in this business can keep friends for that long and stay in the business for that long and work at that level for that long. It's, I guess we were all kind of sent here just to do that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's been an endless parade of respect and love for Neal. I mean, I think that we've both probably worked and been part enough, plenty of tribute records to where it's sort of a Whitman sampler of everything. But the love that every artist is bringing in, you know, and it's not just the artists that are interpreting Neal's songs. It's the idea is to have all of Neal's friends who play take part in this. So we put Billy Strings with Circles Around the Sun. We put Leslie Mendelson with Heffington and Glob, and you know, and we've got some hardworking Americans coming in. We've had the Chris Robinson Brotherhood guys in there backing up Jamie Wyatt, Shooter Jennings, and everybody just comes in with like literally a satchel full of love. And you know, it's a tough project. There's been times where Jim or Gary, we've all sort of heard a line go by in the control room and just, you know, like, whoa. But the, you know, just the vitality and the love for Neal and the fact that he brought so many people together and is continuing to do so it's making it a labor of love, and it's a real joy.
Yeah, it was really a bummer that we had to shut it down because we were having so much fun. It was actually just so healing to hang out together. And Jim's studio is much different than a normal studio. It's a gigantic warehouse, and there's a bar and a kitchen, and Jim prepares lunch and dinner. And so some days we had 20 people there, and we're all sit down for a giant family dinner and listen to music and listen to the recordings we're working on. And it was just so much fun. And I think we did 15 songs, I think, in 15 days in 2 different sessions. And now we're mixing some of them. And some of the people who didn't get a chance to record yet, they won't be able to go to Jim's studio, all of them. So we had to improvise a little bit just because of traveling and the way it is right now. So some people, like Steve Earle, for example, is going to record in Nashville. Lucinda Williams also will record in Nashville. But all of the songs at the end of the day will go through Jim, because Jim will mix them or we'll finish up some things at Jim's studio. But it was such a beautiful time. We've got lots of film from that, and we'll probably be releasing another video or 2 from that. If you haven't watched the Billy Strings Circles Around the Sun video, that's was filmed at Jim's studio, so you can see the psychedelic vibes in full effect, and it was amazing. And then I don't know, Dave, you got any other stories? You got a Neal story you want to tell from the Hardworking Americans days, or anything else?
Well, you know, we recorded that record at Bob Weir's place, TRI, in San Rafael. And the thing about that record was the band had never played together. So on the first day of tracking and setup, many people were meeting each other for the first time. And although I knew Dwayne Trucks and I knew Todd Snyder, I only knew Neal from the pictures of him that were hanging on the wall and from listening to his music. And he walks in and unpacks his gear out of his surfer pickup truck. And, you know, it's like we're trying to get something done. And we pretty much started right away hacking away at the material. And it was just amazing to get to know somebody like through their music first, playing it together, rather than hanging out and talking and finding out what was common in our lives. We hung out and we played, and we found out what was common in the way we played. And every time we'd hit a bump or something, you know, Neal would just very quietly, not give instruction to anyone, just sort of ask a question, you know, like what would Charlie Watts do? You know, what would John McVie play here? You know, and it was just like bing, bing, bing. And that's how I got to know him. And I think that's really special. We really jibed together musically. And then of course, after the 5 days of tracking, we hung out together for another 2 days, just him and I, fixing up the overdubs and layering guitars. And we found out we had a lot in common. And turns out one of the things we have in common is Jim Scott. Because Widespread Panic had been trying to work with Jim in the mid-90s. And finally, we got him to mix one of our records. called Till the Medicine Takes, and it's still my favorite Panic record. And then I've worked with Jim mixing some other records, the Jerry Joseph record, but Neal's the common denominator. And I think that that's important to remember if you like look through the roster on this project. This Highway Butterfly record is all of these people have a direct link to one another, and in most cases it's through Neal. He was a person that brought people together, and for me it was through music, and that's something that I'll always cherish.
Yeah, and the photography book that's coming out, that's on Kickstarter right now, Dave wrote a beautiful, beautiful foreword to that book. So if you get the book, you'll read a nice remembrance of Neal from Dave. And Jim, do you remember the first time you met Neal? I found a note that you sent to me after I sent you the original cassette tape of Neal's first few demos. You wrote back, this is the kind of music I want to work on. And that was such a beautiful, I remember Neal was like, really? He was so excited. And then we came out and met you. You were working at Ocean Way Studios on Sunset Boulevard before Pliers was existing. And we went across the street to Chandara, a Thai restaurant. I remember that. Do you remember that? Do you remember the first time?
I do. And I remember the very first time I heard Neal's demos that you played for me, and our conversation following that as well. I was one of those kind of guys, like, go anywhere, do any job, do your best, work for anybody. And you were, working at a record company, trying to find, secret ways to get your bands recorded and produced and records released. And we were working together on a record that, maybe wasn't either of our favorite kind of music, but somehow you looked at me and you thought that maybe I was somebody. I mean, this was before a lot of records that I've done that people really know about and like. I mean, I was still kind of searching around for, who I was and what kind of a producer I was going to be. And you played me Neal's demos, and I just went like, man, this is what I'm really good at. This is what the kind of music I love. This is what I want to do. I remember that sitting in your office at Megaforce specifically talking about that cassette tape. And, some of those early days in LA with Neal, because we had done, we did some demos at the Carriage House, and we did some demos in a basement somewhere. I forget exactly where that was. We met in maybe a rehearsal in a basement someplace early on.
It was in his basement in Oak Ridge, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember we were kind of proud of our demos. I remember it was Ginty's first real session in a studio, and he didn't understand like how you could repair a track if you played 85% of it great and had to go fix one little thing. He didn't realize that you could just go fix that one little thing. He thought you had to replay the entire performance. And I remember thinking, wow, these guys are really young. They're like way younger than me. Wish they are. But and then when we came to LA and we finally started to rehearse for the Fade Away Diamond Time, when we had Don and Bob and Ginty in the room, like in the first 3 or 4 beats of the first song, it was like, oh gosh, this is it. This is it. This is where Neal belongs. This is our sound. This is what's going to go. And it was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank you for all the stuff you did for Neal. And he always loved working with you, and you too, Dave. So I'll let you guys go back to work. We're going to carry on here. Thank you for popping on. See you later.
Love you,
Thank you. Hey, Dave, we'll see you at Coachella next year with Uncle Dave's band, man.
Well,
Thanks.
Jim's bringing the Pliers mobile truck, and
Yeah.
we're going to get it in one take, live.
Fantastic.
Love you guys.
Love it,
Yeah.
man. Bye-bye.
All right, well, the next thing we're going to move on to here is if any of you were at the tribute concert we did last year for Neal at the Capitol Theater in New York, or if you watched the stream of that, it was called There's a Reward concert for Neal Casal. The show started with a young woman that you probably didn't know who she was came out and sang a beautiful a cappella version of a Doc Watson song. And her name is Dori Freeman. She's from Galax, Virginia. And Neal was a huge fan of Dori's. I started working with Dori about 5 years ago. And I remember telling Neal, "We've got to hear this girl sing." And he flipped out and he wound up playing some guitar on her second record, and helped do quite a few things on that record, actually. And I know he was a big fan of Dori's, and she's going to come on now and she's going to do his song "Sweet in the Distance," which she's going to do on the tribute album. And there she is. Hi, Dori.
Hey, guys.
And on drums, you have her husband, that's Nick Falk. And those three young people behind them are called the Waldmans. And they're an awesome, awesome old-time trio from Floyd County, Virginia?
Yep, Floyd County, just like the neighboring county to Galax.
All right.
The bubble.
I don't know.
In the quarantine bubble.
In the bubble.
Yeah, very good. Do you remember, you met Neal a couple times, right?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm glad you're singing this song, "Sweet in the Distance." This was one of his favorite songs that he wrote. So
I love the song.
When you do it for Highway Butterfly, I think it's going to be a duet with Teddy Thompson.
Cool.
You're kind of your mentor.
Yeah, my record producer for 3 albums.
Yeah. So, all right, well, let's hear it.
Okay, cool. All right. Nothing's gonna stop you now. Everything you want is coming in good time. No one's gonna bring you down. It's just too long to find. I keep your note beside my bed. It gets me through the longest of the long nights. I keep this dream inside my head. It's simple, but without it I would die. I let it sweet in the distance, sweet in the distance, sweet in the distance, sweet in the distance between me and you, if it's alright. What's the sense of looking back and remember how I've wasted so much time? Nothing's gonna change the facts, and it's far too late to cry. Love may tear us apart, but it's never gonna leave us behind. I keep this dream inside my head. It's simple, but without it I would die. Without it I would die. I let it sweet in the distance, sweet in the distance, sweet in the distance, sweet in the distance between me and you. It's a long ride. 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 So give it time. And wanting much to rewind. but it's just too hard to find. So when you're feeling far away and wanting much to rewind, it's just a dream anyway, so simple. Without it we would die. Without it we would die. I let it sweet in the distance, sweet in the distance, sweet in the distance, sweet in the distance. Let it sweet in the distance, sweet in the distance between me and you, if that's alright. It's a long ride.
Awesome, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Nice version.
Thanks.
Enjoy Galax. We're going to miss the Fiddlers Convention this year. That's really,
Yeah, we're gonna miss it too.
maybe you guys should put on your own festival.
Yeah, Nick's been talking about doing his own.
In the backyard.
Yeah, in the backyard.
25 people. Everybody gets a circle in the grass, 8
Totally.
Zoom.
6 feet apart.
feet apart. All right, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hope to see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. All right, well, the next performance here is a guy with one of the greatest names in music, Zephaniah OHora. And I first heard about Zephaniah from our friend Jon Graboff, who you'll meet later. John plays with a lot of different musicians when he lived in New York City, now lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico, but he met Jon Graboff, well, no, he is Jon Graboff. He met Zephaniah OHora and kept telling me, man, you got to hear this guy. And I heard some of the recordings they made and I just loved them. And so I wound up working with Zeph, and John also told Neal about Zeph. And at the same time I was telling Neal, you got to hear this guy. And Neal just fell in love with Zeph's music, and Zeph and Neal were both big Deadheads. So they bonded over that. And Zeph eventually asked Neal last year to produce an album for him. So Zeph had put out his first album in 2018, and then beginning, or maybe it was late 2017, I think. And then in early 2019, they organized a recording session in Brooklyn, and Neal came out from California, and it was Zeph and John Lee Shannon, who you saw earlier playing with Kenny Roby. So, and also Jeff Hill played on that record, and obviously Jon Graboff. And on drums, it was Arthur Vint. And so Neal just loved this record so much, and luckily was around until the record was done. And the record is just coming out at the end of August, and there's a first single is out right now. And let's say hello to Zephaniah, and he's going to play one of the songs from that album that Neal produced. Hey, Zeph.
Hey, what's going on? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Can you see me all right? I feel like my camera moved on me. Anyway.
The light beer endorsement in the background.
Yes, you got to endorse, trying to get sponsored by Miller Lite, so see if it works out.
Can you just give us a brief, little quick history of your friendship with Neal?
Yeah, Neal actually came out for the album release for my first record. And of course I'd known about who he was for a long time and been a fan of his playing and people that he was involved with. And then he just showed up at my release party at Rockwood Music Hall in Manhattan, and we just kind of hit it off afterwards. Like, he just came up to me and just said the most wonderful compliments about my music and the band we had, and we just kind of chatted for a while, and then we stayed in touch, and I went and saw Circles play a bunch of the times, and then I called him up to produce the record, but he thought I was just asking him to play guitar. But I was like, no, actually, I want you to produce the record too. And he was like, oh, I'll have to think about it. And then quickly it just turned into, all right, so what's up with this song? Let's, you know, and then from there it was just a wonderful experience.
Yeah, Neal was always so humble that way. He called me and he was like, man, Zeph wants me to produce this record. I don't know how to produce a record. And I was like, you've played on 50 records, Neal. You've been a producer in your own way, like just thinking conceptually about recordings and how to do them. And he always listened so closely, which I think was the trait that would make him a great producer. And I feel like that's what he was really listening to when he produced your record. It wasn't so much technical stuff as much as it was, that was a great performance right there. And I know.
Yeah, totally.
And just as a great singer himself, I think he was probably a huge help to you when you went to sing your vocals. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was definitely, Neal was just trying to capture the vibe. That was kind of like the goal the whole time, which, you know, he brought me to some places I hadn't been before musically, like, you know, in some sort of kind of a spiritual level. So that was pretty amazing. Yeah, he had a real knack for that. So
cool. So what song are you going to play?
I'm just going to play the the title track off the record, Listening to the Music, which actually this is the one song on the record that Neal was like really focused on this particular song and another song that he just felt like it really had to be right. And we had been spent like maybe, I don't know, several takes trying to figure out the vibe of the song, and we were all in our booths, like in the big studio. And then he just kind of called us all back into the control room, and we just got guitars, and like Jeff Hill got his upright bass, and Graboff got the resonator, and John Shannon got his nylon string guitar, and I think Roy sang harmonies, and Neal played guitar too. And then we just kind of just like sang for a while, all of us just in the room, and that was the first time we'd done that the whole session. And it was just kind of going back to the basics, and it was definitely probably my favorite musical memory of my life so far, was just sitting in that room with Neal strumming that tune. And then he ended up playing acoustic guitar on the recording for the actual live take with most of the band in there. So it's a very special recording.
Sweet.
So I'm gonna do that one. Listening to the radio, alone in my room, thinking back on yesterday. An old-time country song comes on, and I forget my troubles listening to the music once again. One time back in '89, on a Sunday in early August, it hit me with that old time tune. Sent a shiver down my spine, and then I felt the great divine, listening to the music once again. Let the singer sing a song, and a guitar play the chord, and I'm right where I belong, in the glory of the song. living in times of war, an evil that plagues the earth. It's hard to find anything of worth. And in my moments of despair, I find something there, listening to the music once again. Let the singer sing a song in a guitar, play the chord, then I'm right where I belong. The glory of the song. Oh, let the singer sing a song in a guitar, play the chord, and I'm right where I belong. The glory of the song. Oh, and I'm right where I belong. The glory of the song.
Beautiful, man. Thank you. Well, speaking of Jon Graboff, we're going to pop him on. He can wish you a congratulations on the birth of your
himself.
Your little there.
Hey, you hear me?
Hey, hey.
Hey, Zeph, how you doing? Hey, congratulations on the new baby.
Hey, thanks, man.
Kind of cycle of life thing. One guy goes out and another one comes in.
Yeah, it was kind of all interesting timing with that for sure. So
yeah, congratulations, man.
Thanks, man.
Good to see your face. It's been a
nice
while.
and crisp and clear over there. You have a good Wi-Fi connection, I think.
Oh, well, I had very little to do with that.
He was in production. Didn't you hear him talk earlier about how he used to be a cameraman? He knows everything about this stuff.
Ah, okay.
You know, it's all about the lighting, guys. That's the whole key right there.
Yes, excellent. All right, Zeph, you can go back.
Hey, I was gonna say, the funny thing is, Gary, you had the same kind of a similar experience that I had. Got a call from Neal. Well, Zeph had asked me about the idea of Neal producing the record, his next record, and I said, I think it's a great idea. I think he's got all the elements that you'd want for Zeph's particular kind of thing. He loves this kind of music. He really knows how to coax a performance out of a singer, because Neal was such a good singer. I said, all the elements are there. And, I don't know, it could have been a couple of days later, it could have been a little while later. Phone rings, I look down, Neal Casal. Hey, Neal, what's up? He goes, hey, man, Zeph asked me to produce this record, man. I can't do that. I said, what are you talking about? You can't do that. Said, of course you can do that. You're like the perfect guy for it. So I think between Gary and I, we kind of boosted his confidence. I don't know why he didn't think. I mean, I've worked with Neal in so many different situations, and he's always got a little part of his head that has the producer hat on. Whether it's producing his own part or, helping somebody come up with a, with a good vocal take by just saying just the right word, just the right kind of encouragement. I said, dude, you're perfect for it. And I think he was. I think, I can't wait for everybody to hear this record, because it's fun. It's great.
I know, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
What's happening?
Oh, we got interlopers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was really glad that worked out. I mean, as Gary, as you mentioned, I started working, just playing club dates with Zeph, and I just always loved the matter-of-fact way he approached playing music, where it wasn't, hey, look at me, I'm so wonderful. He just sang the tunes, sang them great, and kind of left it up to the audience to sort of make up their own mind about the quality of the performance, the quality of the music, and I just love that about him. Told you guys about him, and next thing you know, we make this great record.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I'll still cherish the hanging out at Skinny Dennis, the three of us, after the first session. I think it was after the first day, just hanging out, listening to you guys tell stories from I don't know how far back. It was fantastic, man. That was just it was a joy.
Yeah, yeah. It was, and you know, that's actually those sessions were the last time I saw Neal. And
Wow, I didn't realize that.
yeah, I don't think I saw him again. Not that I can, off the top of my head, I don't think there was another time. And you know, the thing about it was we weren't there to, you know, when we were working, we weren't there to reminisce. We were there to get good, solid work done. And I can't say I regret the fact that we didn't have more kind of like hang time, but we, you know, we were always about what we were trying to do, which was always we were always about making music. And the peripheral stuff kind of came and went, but the core of the thing was really about making music. And so I look back and go, yeah, you know, if I was going to spend my last moments with the guy, what better way to do it, you know?
Absolutely.
And there's another thing that I don't think people have talked about enough about Neal. And we're kind of touching on it a little bit about it. When the first time I met Neal, I only knew him as a solo artist. I knew he had a couple records out. And then I started working with him in the Cardinals. But before we actually started officially working together, we found ourselves in a situation where we were just kind of jamming with some folks. But it wasn't about him. It was really about somebody else's thing. And I was really kind of curious about, well, here's a solo artist guy. How's he going, you know, how's he going to, and there was talk about him joining the Cardinals at that point. I was going, well, how is he going to interface? He's a solo performer. He's got his thing. But the one thing that I don't think people have talked about enough about him, and this is the depths of his generosity, was it didn't have to be about him all the time. And when it was his job to be in the supportive role, he was 100% in that role. And he could totally departmentalize between his thing, somebody else's thing, or a collaborative thing. Mm-hmm. And he always balanced those out kind of perfectly. It was just kind of amazing to see how easily he could be this guy or that guy, depending on what the situation was. And I think that's one of the things that made him special, not only as a solo artist, but made him why he was so in demand by so many people, because he could be that guy, you know.
He had that early on too. This is the thing. So like when I hear about when he would call and be like, I can't do that, I was like, you can do really as well as anybody, because Neal was always so prepared, and he was always going to play beautiful guitar parts and sing beautifully and always tasteful and classy. Like, it was very rare that Neal would play something where he'd be like, yeah, that's not on target at all. His instincts were always right there.
Well, I'll tell you, can I jump in for a second? I'll tell you a funny little thing. There was this really wonderful tour that Neal and I did. It's kind of a West Coast swing with Iris Dement. And Neal loved Iris. And it was me and Neal and Brian Owings on drums, who plays with Emmy Lou. And I guess it was Dave Jakes who played bass with Prine for 28 years or whatever. And after one of the gigs, the sound guy hands me this little thumb drive. Says, hey, man, I recorded the track, man. You know, try to record it tonight if you want it. And I said, yeah, sure. So we got back to the hotel. It was me and Neal and Brian, and we were listening to that night's performance. And there was this one song, Neal played this solo on this one. That was so simple. It was just really and I said, geez, Neal, I really love that solo. And he goes, yeah, man, I'm really into the underachiever solos these days. And I just love the concept of the underachiever solo. After, you know, knowing about his, you know, past life as a, you know, a hair metal guy who could tap and could do all that stuff. And then he comes out here and just plays this, like, you know, one note per measure kind of solo. And it was very beautiful, but he kind of summed it up. It's like, yeah, it's like, I don't really need to, you know, I kind of like just a simple, you know, when it calls for it, I'll just play this little simple little thing. And it was great.
Yeah.
I have that recording somewhere. I'll have to dig it up sometime. It's fun.
Please do. Yeah, he, that was I think that was 2013 that he filled in. And he had.
Oh, no, excuse me. It was Glaub on bass.
Oh yeah, you're right.
It's right. It was Bob. Yeah.
I think that was in 2013. So at that point, he'd been playing with CRB for a couple of years. And when he was in CRB, you know, he had to play 3 hours of guitar a night, and he had to fill up a lot of space.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's why I think he loved coming to, plus he loved Iris DeMent so much. Like going back to her, I think her first album maybe came out right around the time that I first met Neal, late 80s, mid 80s. And I remember he freaked out over that record. He used to say that he would hear her, as soon as she would start singing, he thought he was going to cry. That's how powerful he was affected by her music. So when I remember how excited he was when you were playing with her, and then for him to get the opportunity to fill in, he was so psyched about that.
Yeah, you know, it was really great. It was great because, you know, he just loved her. And oh, you know, I actually got to clarify something. We did 2 runs, one with Dave Jakes playing bass with Neal, one with Bob Blau playing bass. And I think I have recordings of it all somewhere. I'll have to find it. And we're no commitments. Nobody's firmly, you know, because of the whole COVID thing going on right now. But we have been talking with Iris about doing one of Neal's tunes for the record. And hopefully that'll happen.
Yeah,
That'd be amazing.
Yeah. And just in case any of you missed that, John is. So we've recorded 15 songs for Highway Butterfly right now. I think John's on 11 or 12 of them, maybe. A lot, for sure. And then, I don't know, John, you got a funny story to tell us? Funny tour story or any funny Neal stories you want to share that might be entertaining before we move along here?
Well, I don't think, you know, right off the top of my head, I don't have any funny stories.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you something which is sort of an insight. And anybody who spent a lot of time with Neal knows this side of him. I was on a tour bus for 2 or 3 years with that guy, almost nonstop. And Neal, when he would leave the bus, he would have a look on his face. And the look was, don't ask if you want to tag along. I'm on my own. And you kind of got to the point where you recognized that look.
Yeah.
And so you didn't ask.
Yeah. Yep, I know the look.
You know the look.
Usually he had his camera with him. He was usually going to go eat some food by himself and then wander. Sometimes he would meet friends. And then he was going to.
The one big regret that I have is, you know, in Neal's book, A View from Other Windows, there's 2 photographs of Neal where he's not holding the camera. And I took those 2 pictures, and we had a real mutual love of photography. And the big regret that I have is we had talked about, and we had the same camera at the time too. We talked about going out together one day and taking pictures of the same thing just to compare how we saw those different things. And it never happened. And that's kind of a lingering regret that I have. That didn't come to pass.
That would have been nice.
Yeah.
All right, well, cool. Thanks for telling us some stuff. You got anything else you want to mention?
No.
Where's the cats? John has 2 cats. Neal loved cats, by the way. Cats, he loved dogs too, but cats particularly gravitated towards Neal. I'm sure you saw that.
Oh, yeah.
He was on the same wavelength with cats. And then he wound up having a band called Cats. Who could have predicted?
I think we probably could have predicted it if we had thought about it long enough.
Yeah. All right. Well, John, you want to say hello to your old pal, Leslie Mendelson?
Of course I do. Before I do that, Zeph, great to see you. Hope to see you again sooner or later.
I just saw someone comment say you should start a podcast, and I'm going to agree with that. Please start a podcast, John.
Oh, okay.
He's far too busy for that.
I just saw it in the chat. I don't know who it was.
Yes, and then if Dave and Jim are still, and Kenny and those guys are still watching, I miss all your faces terribly. Hope to see you soon.
There you go. Well, say hello to your old friend, Leslie Mendelson. I know you guys did some gigs together, right?
Oh, yeah.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, John. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Good to see you. Oh, you look great. Where are you?
Oh, you do too. You look so summery with your linen.
Well,
you know,
there's a lot of sun out here, and you kind of can't avoid it, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Aw,
Yeah, Leslie and I,
let's go see everybody.
Leslie and
What?
I did this funny little gig at this little tiny bar in the East Village where we were just doing Randy Newman songs, and I
It was
love
called
that.
Newman.
Yes,
We called it Newman.
Newman.
Like
Sunday Newman.
Seinfeld.
We only
Newman.
did it on Sunday. We only did it on Sundays, and it was all
Sunday
Randy
Newman.
Newman songs. So it was Sunday Newman. Newman.
We shouted it too.
Of course we did. We were not shy about our ridiculousness.
No, it was good. And Keith Christopher, of course, on bass.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Have you seen him lately?
I saw him at Christmas. I don't know. I haven't seen anybody lately.
Yeah. That was kind of a stupid question.
No, it's okay. Let's pretend.
Okay, let's pretend.
Let's pretend things are normal.
Yeah. Everything else is good?
Yeah, living the dream.
Considering?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, there's a couple of people I know put out records right this time, and it's like, oh God, what a bummer.
I know. What are you going to do? I just put it out. I figured, hey, people at least are home. Maybe they'll listen.
Well, sure, yeah. You know, there's a lot of listening time these days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
touring for a while, but, you know. what can
But
you do?
congratulations.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
You too, always.
Hi, Leslie.
We'll have to do this more often.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
So Leslie is also on the Highway Butterfly album, the tribute to Neal, and she does his song "Feel No Pain" beautifully. And that song, when Neal wrote it, was kind of modeled after Jackson Browne. Neal was a huge Jackson Browne fan, and I think you met Neal a few years ago, and I think one of the ways you bonded was talking about Jackson Browne and your mutual love for Jackson Browne. And you obviously have been fortunate enough to write some songs with Jackson and perform with him as well, which is, I know Neal was very jealous of.
Was he? Oh, good.
Yes.
I like that. Yeah, I remember we were at the Ardmore. I think it was like, because we'd known each other for a few years, and, you know, it took, you know, like after you do these kind of group gigs or whatever, these, you know, where everybody's on stage and everybody's hanging out. This time we got to really have a good lengthy conversation. Everybody's in the back parking lot, you know, smoking up and whatever. And we were talking about Jackson Browne. He's like, have you heard this song? Have you heard that one? How have you not heard that one? And then you just like start shooting texts, like just songs to me. And it was great. There was a bunch of stuff I didn't know that he turned me on to.
Yeah. So you're going to play one of them tonight, aren't you?
Yes, I am. This was probably the one that he was just like, how do you not know this song? And I'm like, I probably played it. I was like, yeah, I know it. I didn't know it. Yeah. But it's one that I've just been kind of wanting to play and learn. So I thought we were talking about doing it maybe for the memorial, but we did Rock Me on the Water. So this is when this came up, I was like, oh, let's do this one.
Awesome. Wow.
And it's, do we say what it was yet?
No, but you can go ahead and say what it is.
Let's do it. It's called Something Fine. And this is Steve. He's helping me out, Steve McEwen. I hurt my finger. I sliced the tip off with a carrot peeler. Can you believe that?
Carrot peelers are very dangerous, or you peel off your skin if you're not careful.
I didn't know they were so dangerous. I don't remember them being like that.
Very sharp.
Anyway, so I'm glad he's playing it way better than I could anyway. So it was kind of fortunate.
And this song is,
Oops. All right, here we go.
this song is from the very first
Oh,
Jackson.
yeah, it's called Something Fine.
Oh, yeah.
The papers lie there helplessly in a pile outside the door. I've tried and tried, but I just can't remember what they're for. The world outside is tugging like a beggar at my sleeve. Oh, that's much too old a story to believe. And you know that it's taking its share of me, even though you take such good care of me. Now you say Morocco, and that makes me smile. I haven't seen Morocco for a long, long while. The dreams are rolling down across the places in my mind, and I've just had the taste of something fine. The future hides, the past just slides, and England lies between, floating like a silver mist, so cold and so clean. In California, shaking like an angry child will, who has asked for love and is unanswered still. And you know that I'm looking back carefully, 'cause I know that there's still something there for me. But you said Morocco, and you made me smile. It hasn't been that easy for a long, long while. And looking back into your eyes, I saw them really shine, and giving me a taste of something fine. Something fine. Now if you see Morocco, I know you'll go in style. And I may not see Morocco for a little while. While you're there, I was hoping that you'd keep it in your mind to save me just a taste of something fine.
Beautiful. So nice. So nice.
Thanks.
You know, when Neal first got out of his hair band metal phase, he had met this guy Davis Janes, and they had a little duo that would play at a kind of a restaurant in Morristown, New Jersey called the Recovery Room, and they would do Jackson Browne and Elton John and all of these beautiful songs. I really wish I had a recording of it. Maybe Davis does. I'll have to ask him. But Neal, I don't think he sang that song, but he would sing Shaky Town and Rosie and
These are such good ones.
beautiful version of Country Comfort by Elton John. He loves singing.
I love all that country stuff by Elton. That's all that stuff's great.
Well,
that Tumbleweed Connection album.
Well, that was beautiful.
I digress. Thank you. And did you say that you showed Neal that song, or you turned him onto it?
Yeah, I did. I was a huge Jackson Browne fan when I was a little kid, and when I met Neal, I think he knew Running on Empty, but he hadn't heard the first two albums, which are really probably the great Jackson Browne albums, and he came over and recorded both of those, and I just remember him freaking out over Something Fine. And, yeah,
it's kind of like me. I was like, when I heard it, I was like, how do I not know this one?
The beautiful song. You ask Jackson what it's about. You can go right to the source.
No, I've done that. I'm not doing it again.
He probably doesn't want to talk about that stuff.
It's another story along. This is great. I'm glad. Thanks for having me.
Thanks to Lorenzo. Thanks to Steve. Nice job on the guitar, Steve. You did a good job there. Very beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Gary.
Yeah, thanks for the tuning tip.
You're welcome.
Yeah, the tuning tip was good.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. Makes it a lot easier to play.
Totally. Bad finger.
Well, speaking Speaking of guitars, I'm really excited about this because we're going to bring on Scott Walker, who has a company where he makes custom guitars, Walker Guitars. And it was, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. I can't remember when it was, but there's a magazine called Fretboard Journal, and they do beautiful stories on guitars and guitar makers. And there was a feature on Scott Walker in there, and with these beautiful photographs of his guitars. And I took a bunch of pictures of the pages of the magazine and sent it to Neal. And I was like, man, you gotta check out this guy's guitars. Because at that time, Neal was a year or two into CRB, and he was playing a Gibson SG, which he'd played for years, and is an amazing guitar, and Neal made it sound beautiful. But he realized that he needed more options for sounds. So if you're going to play guitar for 3 hours a night, 6 nights a week, you need to have as many options at your fingertips of different tones. And these Scott Walker guitars had many different features that were going to be useful for Neal. So I had just said, you got to check this guy out. And luckily he did. And Scott's in Santa Cruz, California, and Neal at that time with CRB was spending a lot of time up that way. So he got to go over and meet Scott, and we'll bring Scott on right now and talk about Scott Walker guitar and Neal Casal. Hey man.
Hey, what's up? All right, Gary. Hey everybody. Right on.
Do you remember when Neal first called you and talked about making it?
Yeah, of course. It was a message on the answering machine. So I got this message, and I didn't know who Neal was. So I'm late to the party. And so I get this message, hey, my name's Neal Casal. I'm looking for a custom guitar. And, kind of couple of things on there, and nothing, really stood out. So I called him back, and we got talking about guitar. And he was like, oh, yeah, I'm playing with Chris Robinson. And I was like, oh, and then the Ryan Adams, the Cardinals came out, and I had no idea who and then so so it was a pleasant surprise for sure connecting with him. Cool. And that was the beginning of we did a couple of guitars, and through those each guitar we probably built a couple more within it, because we made a lot of changes and different things along the way, and it was a lot of fun getting to know Neal from there. Now going back, all those solo albums and all of his, all of the collaborations he's done and stuff, just mind-blowing, the material.
Yeah, he was, so when he got that guitar from you, and Neal had obviously played Fenders, Gibsons, and all kinds of things, and he loved those guitars. But I think he wanted to play one guitar. He didn't want to have like 3 guitars on a stand where he had to switch guitars every song. And that's what attracted him to your guitars, that they were so versatile. And I know that he talked to you a lot about that. I remember the first time I saw him play with that guitar, because we always, going back from when I first started working with Neal, we were always in search of guitar sounds, and we were always bummed about acoustic guitar sounds. Like when he would play gigs, he'd be like, it just didn't sound good. He was always trying to figure out, what kind of pickup should I use? Should I have a microphone? And then with electric guitars as well, I know that every time I would go to see CRB in the early days, unless I stood right in front of his amp, I was always bummed out by like, you need more push, or you need more versatility, or whatever it was. And he would always be like, what did it sound like? And I was like, it still needs like maybe a different amp or a pedal. And he's like, I know, what the hell is it? So when he first got the guitar from you, he was so happy. And really, he would go on tour, he wouldn't even bring another guitar a lot of the times. He would just play that guitar, and if he broke a string, he would just fix it during the song or after the song. And so
for sure.
It was like that guitar, that first guitar you built him, I think he played more music on that than any other instrument he owned in his life.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, that's incredible. I remember, going to the like, you know, the Robinson show, the CRB shows, and swapping out a part on his preamp like 5 minutes before sound check or something, you know, in his guitar. We'd always, you know, there was all, when he'd come to town, we'd do a little tweak like 5 minutes before showtime. I'd run in there with my toolbox and my soldering machine and do some tweak and just be like, all right, I know you got a backup, but let's hope this thing works, you know, just always sweating bullets like in the dressing room with the soldering machine and tweaking his guitar out, searching for that sound, trying to dial it in. So something, yeah, that cuts through the mix without, you know, making everybody's ears bleed. And that's always been kind of that, you know, especially with the CRB, because that was one of his first, like, okay, I got to play the guitar solos that got to just get, you know, the energy up and, you know, kind of that front, you know, solo guitar gig. And so we really tried to make something that was versatile for, you know, the variety of the genres, you know, but yeah, something that would cut through, because I mean, that's a lot of the music. You go, it's like, it's not necessarily turn up. It's something just about the cut, you know, I don't know, but it's always a goal. And yeah, it was fun working with Neal. Was just amazing. Just, you know, cause he had this, like, you know, whatever the rabbit hole cliche, you know, and we're down far, and he would just, you know, he would drive up here from Ventura, you know, 4 or 5 hour drive, and stop in, and, you know, he'd get out of his truck and stretch and scratch his head, and we'd go in the shop and start doing stuff. And you know, that was super fun. You know, I don't have any crazy road stories, just kind of the mad scientist in the shop, you know. Just, I love that with Neal, you know, with the guitar, especially that first one. Well, they both had that effects loop, onboard effects loop. That was kind of Jerry Garcia's kind of thing. And yeah, he wanted that, but he wasn't quite sure exactly what it did. And we'd talk about it, and he'd get it, and we'd do it, and then he'd be like, he'd go home and he'd be like, so what is it again? How does it work? You know, so I'd run him through, and we'd get the custom cables made, and then he got it. I remember he got it, and he called me and was like, oh, dude, this is, you know, incredible. It's, you know, kind of a gear thing, but just, you know, and that's when his pedal board started really getting crazy, and his, you know, he really got into his sound and the signal chain and the custom amps, and it was just so fun doing that. I love doing that.
Yeah, thanks, man. What was the so the second guitar you built him, which sadly he only used a little bit,
yeah,
what was the difference? Of what did he come to you and say, I want to do another one, and here's the changes I want to do? What was he looking for on that second guitar?
Well, you know, so the Garcia's Wolf guitar, you know, such a unique instrument, just ergonomically, how it hangs, and the neck, and some of the ergonomics of that guitar, you know. So he played that a few times, and it just fit him like a glove. It just, and it does. Most everybody that plays that guitar says this is, you know, something unique. Just the feel of it, and where your hands are, you know, there's like 2 guitars in one in that guitar. So, you know, I don't really do like the clone, straight up kind of clone guitars. So, you know, I kind of do my own thing with some of those influences of the Doug Irwin, and, you know, so I was like, you know, I got to come up with that footprint. So something that hangs and plays like that. And so that was one of the main things, was just getting the ergonomics like the Wolf was a big inspiration. So I was like, let's shoot for that. And then, you know, the Tiger guitar with that Cocobolo guitar of Garcia's had the amazing sculpted top and some things. So we kind of put it both together, and came up with this kind of hybrid of that wolf and the tiger guitar. And then we use a lot of the same electronics and just different pickups. He used that Firebird pickup in the neck position, which was one that, you know, he always is like, it's a popular one with Barry Sless, has that Firebird in the neck. And Neal was like, whenever I hear Barry play, I look and there it is. It's that neck position in the Firebird. And so that we ended up putting that in. And yeah, just the main thing was the ergonomics, though. That the Wolf guitar just hangs and plays in such a cool way. Yeah.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks for thanks for filling us in. I'm really glad that he met you, and I'm glad that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Me too, Gary.
Cool.
Yep.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
We're going to move along now to Ross James, who Neal played quite a bit with, and you guys may know him. He plays with Phil Lesh and Friends and the Terrapin Family Band. And I think Ross also did one of the Tree of Forgiveness performances a couple weeks ago, and he's got quite a beard. For that, there he is. Hi, Ross.
How you doing, Gary?
I'm good, man. I see Neal in the background there.
Yeah, man. You know, we did a gig, a charity gig in New York. Like, it was one of the last gigs that we played, and there was a silent auction, and this picture was there, and Megan, my fiance, surprised me with it. And it took me a while to be able to hang it up, but I put it up there, and I give lessons all the time now, and I'm doing streams, and it's there behind me. So, and I remember that show. It was at Central Park with Phil, and when I used to tour manage for Phil for a while, and part of that was I would help put the bands together, and anytime we needed a guitar player, I'd be like, well, how about Neal? You know, always tried to get him on those gigs.
Yeah. Do you remember when you first met him? Was it Terrapin days? Was it when he?
Yeah, it was the first time he came to Terrapin, and it's funny, man. You know, like I looked up to both Neal and Graboff for years, and really like seeing these dudes being able to have their own voice and be in somebody else's band, but still, you know, do their thing artistically was such an inspiration for me. And all of a sudden one day they appeared at Terrapin Crossroads, and Brian Lesh and I were like working together, and we were both really stoked. And yeah, I mean, that's when we got to know him, and he would come and play with Phil, but then he'd also play gigs with us in the bar. And it just, you know, I mean, I remember like he would be in town, you know, and I'd have a gig, and he'd like call me, be like, hey, you playing? Is it cool if I come play a couple songs? And it never ceased to like blow my mind and just be the greatest thing, getting to make music with him.
That's awesome. And so Phil and the Terrapin Family Band are going to do a track for the Highway Butterfly album as well. And I don't know what song it's going to be yet, but I can't wait for that. I think
me too.
We'll have to get Graboff on that one as well.
Definitely.
But what are you going to play for us now?
Man, you know, I wrote this tune right after Neal died, and I haven't, I've never really played it, and I figured it was a good time to give it a whirl. So,
great.
Cool.
All right.
I wish you had taken your pain, rolled it up in a bone, sat in a circle with all of us, lit it up and passed it around, 'cause we'd all take a hit, breathe it in deep, yeah, we'd all take a hit, from our head to our feet, we'd all take a hit for the love of you, we'd all take a hit, hell, I'd even take two. When I met you, I was green as the trees, but more than just a stone face you somehow did see. But your hurt and your pain, well, it ain't no lie. I'll see you again, and that by and by, well, we'll all take a hit. Breathe it in deep, yeah, we'll all take a hit. From our head to our feet, we'll all take a hit for the love of you. We'll all take a hit, hell, I'll even take two. I only hope now that you are free, looking down on all of us and see how your light, your wave, and your sound made our world spin around. And let's all take a hit, breathe it in deep. Let's all take a hit from our head to our feet. Let's all take a hit for the love of you. Let's all take a hit, hell, I'll even take two. Yeah, let's all take a hit, hell, I'll even take two.
Might be a hit. It might be.
Man.
Taking a hit might be a hit.
Yeah, man.
You got to
Yeah.
record that.
Yeah, you know, the Doug Psalm tune, Stone Faces Don't Lie, right? He taught me that song, and he'd play it with us. And it was because I was always so high back in the day, like when he would come to town, and like my face definitely doesn't lie. And he could tell from a mile away. And there was one time we even sang Christmas carols, right? I wish I had the picture to show you. We sang Christmas carols. It's me, him, Scott Law, and Phil singing Christmas carols at Terrapin. And my eyes are just like huge. And he stopped singing mid-tune to just capture the moment. And it's like, it's one of my favorite pictures. He took so many great pictures of all of us, but it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, you know, Neal was not a pot smoker, really.
No.
He didn't like he smoked a lot when he was a bad boy teenager at the mall. And then that kind of, he stopped. He liked to drink a little wine, but he didn't smoke weed. He would always be like, and anytime he'd see people smoking weed, he'd be like, yeah, man.
Totally.
Like, always like mock it.
For somebody who doesn't like he would have a little bit of wine, but he'd love to surround himself with people who are fucked up.
And then he would be the smart guy on the outside who wasn't.
Exactly, taking pictures of everybody.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Thank you for that.
Thank you, man. So good to see you, and thanks for doing this, man. Oh, there you go. There he is.
There's Doug Psalm.
That's amazing.
Neal loved Doug. We were at South by Southwest in roughly 1997. There's Kenny Roby.
Yeah.
And Doug Psalm was getting an award from the Austin Music Association or something. And me and Neal were standing backstage because Neal was playing with Hazeldine, these girls that he played quite a bit with in the late 90s. And they were getting ready to go on. But before they went on, Doug Psalm was going to get an award. And Doug came in the backstage door in this like blue rhinestone kind of suit and a big hat. And we were just like, oh, Doug Psalm. It was great. There he is.
I love it, man.
All right. Well, thanks, man.
Thank you, Gary. Take care, man.
All right. See you later.
See ya.
All right. Well, we're getting near the end. I actually, this next guy we're going to bring on played on more Neal solo music than anybody. His name is John Ginty. And John grew up right next to where Neal and I grew up in Morris County, New Jersey. And when Neal started recording his solo music, we were like, we got to find somebody who can play organ and piano. And I forget who it was. Somebody told us, oh, you got to go see this guy, John Ginty. He plays in a band called Rose Hill. So Rose Hill was a cover band. And back then, cover bands could sell out this place called the Wetlands in New York City. The Wetlands was a place where Grateful Dead type bands and Allman Brothers type bands played. And John was playing with Rose Hill. And Neal and I went in there one night. And as we walked in the door, I remember we could just hear this B3 organ just blazing. And we sat there on the side and watched John play, and we were like, he's the guy. And then we handed John a cassette tape after the show and said, if, you know, Neal was like, man, I'd love you to play on some of my songs. And after that, John played on every solo record Neal did. And John has also played with Robert Randolph and the Family Band, Jewel, the Dixie Chicks, and he's currently in the Allman Betts Band. And before we get to John, we're going to show you a video that John just finished. And he has a solo album, John Ginty Band album, coming out. And he recorded it with Jim Scott about 2 summers ago at Jim Scott's studio, which you saw a little bit of earlier. And it's an instrumental song that John wrote. And he called up Neal and he's like, man, I'd love you to come and play on this song. Just happened to get Neal on a day when he wasn't on tour. And Neal came up to the studio and played on this beautiful song. And they luckily had cameras rolling, and we're going to premiere this video. Nobody has seen this video before, so for the end of the show, you get to watch this John Ginty Band video, and then we'll chat with John for a minute.
Headed west. We had a show in San Francisco and then 3 days in the studio with Jim Scott. First, we had to make a stop. Our good friend Mark was growing marijuana on a little farm north of San Francisco called Dubenville. We were 1 song short for the recording session with Jim, so I thought it would be a good idea to do a writing session there. That was a hard tour, long drives, crazy places. We were wiped out when we got to Dubenville. But we loaded all the gear onto Mark's porch and set ourselves up for a little nighttime jam. We created this lovely little piece of music. We liked it so much, we named it Dubenville. Hot to pliers, feeling good. I had done over 30 records with Jim Scott, but always as the sideman. This was the first time as an artist. To have your name on the sign is a big deal. I've seen some heavy names on that sign. I called my old friend Neal Casal, and shockingly, he was home in LA for a day. He agreed to come track with us, and I knew that Dubenville was going to be the song to throw at him.
Playing with Neal on Dubenville was, I don't know, magical would be certainly one word that would come to mind.
What he added to that song was incredible. The song, in my opinion, was already incredible, and that just took it to a level that I had never imagined. And being a part of that is something that I will always remember, and that'll always be really special to me.
He didn't, he didn't play a lot of crazy fast notes. He didn't, no big shots stuff, no bullshit.
Wow. Wow, that really blew my mind. I've seen it a couple times already, but every time I see it, brings back a lot of memories of friendship between me and Neal and John. And if you saw Mike Buckman in there, he was the red-haired guitar player. He actually worked with me at the record store where I met Neal the first time. And so he goes way back with Neal, and he actually did the artwork on some of Neal's early solo albums, the graphic design, and was a great friend of Neal's as well. And well, let's bring John Ginty on and have a little chat about that. Man, that really hit me hard, man.
Yeah, me too. Wow.
Yeah.
And, it took me a long time to make that thing. I spent hours doing it, but to see it back again it's heavy stuff, man. It's a heavy performance from Neal there.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful to Phil Silverberg for being there to film it. Thank God Phil was there. I remember at the time it was a debate over a couple $100 whether to get him, and then we had to change a flight and do a thing. And boy, I wouldn't, give to what I wouldn't pay for that now. It's incredible. So
Yeah.
thanks for showing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. And I mentioned before we showed that you go way back with me and Neal, and played on, I think, every single Neal Casal solo album.
I did.
Maybe No Wish to Reminisce. Are you on that one? That might be the only one but I think you are on it.
Yeah, no, I think I am. I think because for that one and for Sweet in the Distance, I did those keyboard parts here in my home studio behind me. So, so yeah, even when I wasn't there on the session, I still managed to sneak in, as I'm doing with the tribute record as well. You know, I think the plan was 2 or 3 songs, and I'm up to 7 or 8 now. So I'll find my way there.
Well, just like Jim Scott mentioned that he always liked to get Neal on records that he was producing by other artists, he does the same thing with John. He always is calling John and be like, hey, I'm going to send you a song. Can you put some piano or organ on this? And so on the Highway Butterfly album, John went to the studio before we had to shut down. John went for one day, and I think he played on a couple songs actually at the studio when no one else was there, right?
I did. The Allman Betts Band had done a show in LA, and I went up, I think the day of the show, I went up for a little while, and then the next day we had a day off. So I actually brought some of the Allman Betts Band with me. I was, everybody had a day off, and it was just kind of, nobody knows what to do. I'm like, come on, let's go to Pliers. So yeah, I brought a bunch of the dudes up, and we had a great time just hanging and doing the Pliers scene,
Nice. Do you recall the first time you met Neal? Do you remember that?
Sure. Yeah, actually it was pretty much, the story that you told at the Wetlands. That was the first time, but I had gotten wind of that you guys were out there, somebody said oh, this guy is here to check you out, and he's here with his manager or whatever. And I'll never forget when you guys handed me the cassette tape with the Warner Brothers logo on it. And I thought, oh my God, this is it. I was just I was 19 or 20 years old playing in a cover band. So, but the first couple months where Neal would come over to my apartment in Mount Arlington, I lived above a restaurant with Mark Seibel in this tiny little place. And he would come over and we would just set up and jam. And those first couple months were amazing. It was where we really got to know each other. And, along with a lot of jams, there was a lot of car rides too. And how many car rides the 3 of us have taken through Joshua Tree in California and all manner of places. And, but that's where you really get to know somebody. You guys always had the perfect soundtrack going for the trip. Whatever trip we were on, man, the tape deck was firing the right thing,
Mixtapes. We had mixtapes.
You guys were always prepared. You taught me well. And I've listened to Black Sabbath going into Berlin with Neal Casal as much as I've listened to Jackson Browne up in Oak Ridge, New Jersey. So we always had the right thing going.
Yeah. I see our buddy Mark Seibel on here as well. Mark's family owned the Arlington Cafe in Mount Arlington, New Jersey. And I have a bunch of tapes of the early Neal Casal band playing there. And I have probably 5 or 6 full show recordings from there from back in the day. Ricky Mayer.
Yeah.
Spenley on drums. Kevin Spenley.
Angie McKenna,
of course.
Yep.
I should have invited Angie to come on here. Forgot about that. Anyway, but you got any last stories you want to tell about Neal before we go? Because we've actually, shockingly, this was scheduled to go till 10 o'clock, and it is 10 o'clock now. This is the power of my hosting skills and scheduling abilities.
Come on, Gary. You know how rock and roll goes. You know this was going to run late. It's all good. There's so many great Neal Casal stories. I wouldn't know where to begin. I will just say that, it seems like the older Fade Away Diamond Time gets, the better that record gets. It was Neal's first record. It was our first big deal. And it almost got completely flummoxed because of Perry Farrell. Okay? So everybody who loves Fade Away Diamond Time, I want you to know this. The week leading up to doing that record, me and Gary and Neal were in Joshua Tree, and we were hanging out. We were getting our space together, and Gary was on the phone every day. Remember, this is before cell phones and texts. So he's finding phones, and we're waiting for Perry Farrell to clear out of Shangri-La, was the name of the studio, right up in Malibu, which is where we were scheduled to go. That's the plan. That's where we're going to go. We're going to make this great record up at Shangri-La. Well, like 2 days before, Perry's not going to leave. And we had to evacuate Joshua Tree. I remember Gary was just like, we got to get out of Joshua Tree. I can't fix this from Joshua Tree. I can't fix this from the desert. So we evacuated to LA. They pulled all types of maneuvers and magic tricks and rabbits out of hats for us to end up at Palacio del Rio, which is where we ended up recording Fade Away Diamond Time. And it's a beautiful record, and it was the perfect place to record it. But it almost didn't happen because of Perry Farrell. So there you go. There's my little bit of Neal Casal trivia for everybody who likes that record as much as I do.
Yeah. Yeah. When we were going to make that record, what Neal wanted to do was not go to a regular studio where you're staying in a hotel and then you're going to the studio and then leaving the studio. We wanted to go to either a house and that already had a studio in it where everybody could live in the same place, or we wanted to find a place and set up a mobile studio there. So Shangri-La was in Malibu. The band had worked there, believe it or not. That's where they mixed the Last Waltz album. So of course, and I think Neil Young also made Zuma there. So of course we were like, the band and Neil Young worked there, we gotta go there. And Neil and I don't know if you were with us, John, but we had gone out there and looked at the place and gotten a tour of it. We were so excited. And then it came time to record, and the guy who was setting up the studio for us it was a little bit sketchy. He was like, yeah, we should be able to start on Monday. And I was like, what? What do you mean should? Everybody's here, we're going. And then finally, yeah, we were out in the Joshua Tree having our pilgrimage before making the big debut record, having a great time, only to get the news that maybe we're not going to be able to start on Monday. And then the guy who was setting up a studio for us said, no, there's a mansion. It's in Santa Ynez, California. It's one of the most beautiful spots in California. It's outside of Santa Barbara. Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch is there. That's how beautiful it is.
And we had Ronald Reagan's ranch was down the bottom of the road. Jimmy Connor, the tennis star, at the bottom of the road. And this was Dean Martin's house back in the day, and it was a prohibition spot. So there was a hidden bar, and there was all types of basketball court and pool, and beautiful place. Yeah.
And there is it was a beautiful Spanish style ranch on a mountaintop, and there were 12 bedrooms, and every bedroom, I think if I remember correctly, had a fireplace. So of course, once we found out we were going to go to this place, we forgot about Shangri-La, and we went there, and it was like this magical month of living there, making that album. And I remember Bob Glaub was playing bass, and one day Bob was like, oh, David Crosby lives right up the road. Maybe I'll call him and he can come over and say hello.
Well, Bob was nonchalant about it. He was like, do you guys mind if my friend David comes over? We're like, yeah, whatever, man. David Crosby shows up.
And I remember 15 minutes later, David Crosby is in the control room with us. And I remember Neal, like David Crosby, and Neal's in the back, like, just watching David Crosby listen to one of his songs. I know it was terrifying, like the longest 4 minutes of Neal's life. And David Crosby just sat there and was kind of like, thought it was pretty good. So that was really fun. So those were the days. Well, thank you, John.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you for sharing the video.
I appreciate you, man.
Really special. And that song, Dubenville, is going to be up on Spotify and iTunes next Friday, July 17th. And we'll get the video up on YouTube as well. And we'll make a post about that so everybody remembers to check that out. And
excellent. And shout out to Neal's longtime roadie, Dan Nappy, who's in the hospital after back surgery, but he's recovering. So good thoughts to Nappy. Everybody, if you were around the first tour, you know who I'm talking about.
Back surgery for Dan Nappy is probably a lot due to you making him carry a gigantic Hammond B3 organ and Leslie upstairs, downstairs, in and out of trucks and buses and
fire escapes. He's the only guy I've ever seen actually pick up a Leslie cabinet by himself and just walk it off a stage. Impressive. He's doing good though. We're all thinking about him.
Cool. Well, I can't thank everybody enough. Everybody has been so generous with sending out the love to Neal and to the foundation and to our Kickstarter. And in case you didn't see it, we'll wrap up tonight with, we put out a video today. It was premiered by Relics magazine. It's Neal's song, Tomorrow's Sky, with, and the video is a slideshow of photographs from the book called Tomorrow's Sky, which is a book of Neal's photography that's only available in our Kickstarter campaign. If you haven't got one, it's just an amazing book. Neal was a great photographer. And so we made this video with pictures from the book. And Jay Blakesberg, who some of you might know of, is a great photographer and was a friend of Neal's and was nice enough to assemble this book with his daughter, Ricky. It's a beautiful book. It was a specific request of Neal's. He was like, you know, Neal, some of you might have heard, Neal left a long letter that's very emotional to read and also very beautiful. And one of his wishes about his photography was that there would be a book to come out. And so we're happy to honor that. And if you haven't gotten one on Kickstarter, please do get it. It's available for another week or so. And we'll keep you posted on all the goings on. We've got more stuff that we're just going to keep rolling out to honor Neal. And thank you all so much again. And maybe when we get the Highway Butterfly album out, we'll do one of these again. Maybe we can wrangle all 33 artists from it onto a Zoom call at once. That would really be something, but no promises, of course, because artists can be difficult to get commitments from, but you never know. So thank you all. Good night.
So tired of waiting around where a minute feels like a day. It won't be too long now. The wind is gonna blow my way. They say, what you gonna do with your time now that it's yours to share? Looking at tomorrow's sky, everything is still up in the air, up in the air. It might be a little while, but I know I'm gonna see you somewhere. So don't call it the end. Black dog, side of the road, it's not a secret if nobody asks. Long walk, summer alone, waiting for the storm to pass. Nobody knows where all the time goes or how long it's all gonna last. Nobody knows who cast the first stone, better leave it all in the past. Nobody knows where all the time goes or how long it's all gonna last. Nobody knows who cast the first stone, better leave it all in the past. What you gonna do with your time now that it's yours to share? Looking at tomorrow's sky, everything is still up in the air. What you gonna do with your time now that it's yours to share? Looking at tomorrow's sky, everything is still up in the air, 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 up in the air. It might be a little while, but I know I'm gonna see you somewhere. So don't call it the end.